you're peculiar. You know that, don't you? They've all said at one time or another, how on earth did the two of us ever get together? Black magic, my mother says.
Well, she'd know, wouldn't she?
Welcome to episode 12 of the Fawlty Towers podcast, where, Ian, I have to admit, they all say you're peculiar.
Well, they don't all say that I'm peculiar.
They do.
Okay, well.
How did we ever get together?
Who knows, black magic.
How are things?
Oh, not as good now that you've called me peculiar.
Not necessarily a bad thing, is it? I can think of plenty of peculiar people who are quite good.
Who?
Ed Gein.
Good at what?
Well, he had skills. He was a bit odd. Anyhow,
final episode of
is.
Fawlty Towers it is.
Yeah. Sad to see it go.
Well, it doesn't feel quite as much of an achievement as our previous podcast.
Not 12 episodes. We used to rattle those out in a week.
Yeah. It's been worth it though. It's been quite entertaining. Plenty to talk about.
I think so. I've certainly appreciated the show in a new light after delving a little bit deeper into it.
I think that's always the case. When you just watch a show like this, you don't really necessarily think about every part of it, whereas when we're doing a show like this of our own, you need to.
Some people might suggest we shouldn't think about it so deeply. We should let it run over us.
They're free to do that.
Yeah, they're peculiar. Will we start?
No.
Fair enough. Can we have a summary anyway?
Okay.
Crack on.
In Basil the Rat, Manuel is directed to remove his beloved pet rodent from the premises after a surprise visit from the public health department puts Basil, Sybil and the rest of the hotel staff into a panic. With rat catching added to the very long list of changes to be made in just 24 hours, can Basil and the team satisfy the inspector, or is it curtains for Fawlty Towers?
Spiffing, Ian, thank you. We begin in the car park. It's not normally where we pick things up.
No, we see the car driving past the sign at the start of the episode, which is quite a nice touch.
It was.
So I think it's the second time we've seen the sign interacted with.
Mm-hmm. Sybil and Basil pull up mid-argument.
They do. Sybil's driving the car.
Is she? Why not?
Sure.
What are they discussing?
Well, it's not made entirely clear, but it sounds like she wants to do something that evening, but for that to happen, Basil needs to do something else, but he won't do it because he wants to do the accounts.
I think it's just look after the hotel.
Right.
She wants to get with her friends, and we heard more of her moaning at the top of the podcast.
Yeah. It seems odd to me. It's not really like her to care what Basil thinks in these circumstances.
No, but she does need someone to run the hotel.
Yeah, but you don't think she'll just assume that he'll just do it if I go out?
Yeah, we wouldn't expect that he would let guests stand at reception or whatever, yeah. Anyway, this argument continues inside that reception with Sybil complaining that she's cooped up and he never takes her out. That's interesting, but I suppose they don't have time. He, as we have witnessed, is basically up at 5, 6 in the morning, doesn't get to bed until the last guest is in.
Yeah.
So it's hardly his fault that they don't have time to be gallivanting.
No, absolutely not.
Into the kitchen. And on walking through, who is he met by?
A scavenger gourmet?
Yes.
Mr. Carnegie himself.
Yes, he is on his knees in front of the fridge, sniffing some meat, which leads an astounded Basil to go off sarcastically about how he will help him really tuck in.
He's going to get some potato peelings out the bin, etc. He doesn't take any time to assess or ascertain what is going on. He just decides, this is someone who's rooting around for food in our kitchen.
Yes. So he introduces him to Sybil, who has just walked in as a guest or a person who's opened up self-service.
Yeah. But Mr. Carnegie, at this point, confirms that he's from the public health department, and the mood shifts somewhat.
It does. His attitude changes to the subservient mentality that we've witnessed in the past, either because the person is supposedly of a higher class or in a more powerful position.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to the Hotel Inspectors episode from the first season.
Of course.
Polly comes in at this point. She's obviously interacted with Mr. Carnegie previously because she's fetched something for him.
Yeah, I think it's a receipt showing that the meat that he's looking at was recently purchased and therefore acceptable.
I did like Basil's snivelling at this point, hoping that Mr. Carnegie wasn't offended by his little joke.
Yeah, I think he makes a crack about the scavenger being a place.
Yeah, and he says something about, thank God we English can laugh at each other.
Yeah. At this point, Terry pops his head in, but seeing the visitor, disappears with a bang, causing Basil to claim that, what? Not remember? Offer a quick prayer.
Oh, right, yeah. I think Polly whispers something in Terry's ear, so he's obviously being told this is who's here.
However, Mr. Carnegie is not interested, and there's some bad news for Basil.
These premises do not come up to the standard required by this authority. Unless appropriate steps are taken instantly, I shall have no alternative but to prosecute or recommend closure to the appropriate committee of the council. Specifically, lack of proper cleaning routines, dirty and greasy filters, greasy and encrusted deep fat fryer, dirty cracked and stained food preparation surfaces, dirty cracked and missing wall and floor tiles, dirty marked and stained utensils, dirty and greasy interior surfaces of the ventilator hoods.
Yes, about the deep fat fryer.
Inadequate temperature control and storage of dangerous foodstuffs, storage of cooked and raw meat in same trays, storage of raw meat above confectionery with consequent dripping of meat juices onto cream products. Refrigerator seals loose and cracked, icebox undefrosted and refrigerator overstocked.
Yes, say no more.
Food handling routines suspect. Evidence of smoking in food preparation area. Dirty and grubby food handling overalls. Lack of wash hand basin, which you gave us a verbal assurance you'd have installed on our last visit 6 months ago, and 2 dead pigeons in the water tank.
Otherwise okay?
These are precisely the type of onerous EU regulations that Brexit is going to free us from, so
PC gone mad.
here's to meaty cream cakes and pigeony water next year.
I like Basil's response at the end there.
Yeah.
Anyway, he tells Basil that they have 24 hours to sort things out, and that on his return, he will be inspecting the rest of the hotel, and as he leaves, he tells Basil that the only scavenging gourmets in the kitchen will be kamikaze ones.
24 hours seems an arbitrary and very short period to resolve these issues.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that he is satisfied. We see later that if it's something major, like you have to purchase like a new wash hand basin, if you can show that you have bought that, that's fine. You've got a receipt. However, 24 hours is more than enough if you're dripping meat into cream cakes. That's the type of thing that could cause serious ill health. So, no, you can't have a fortnight to remedy that.
To be fair, the cream cakes on their own can cause serious ill health.
They can.
Terry's relieved. He thought they were in trouble.
Yeah, well, he pops back in now that the inspector's gone, and he's at it again with this attitude. He casually discusses the list before making a joke about Fawlty Towers, which is actually quite funny, and referencing Orwell's Down and Out in Paris and London. But yeah, we've mentioned before, he's not this lovable chap that I think many people have in their mind's eye.
No, yeah, he says the filthier a kitchen is, the better. Mm-hmm. And Basil asks him for a copy of that book so he can read it out in court.
As they're arguing about this, Sybil enters and tells him to get upstairs and work on some of the failings, including removing the pigeons from the water tank. And we see Polly remove the cat from the kitchen. Now, this is another thing. During this episode, no one's really concerned about this cat.
Well, it's made out that it's their cat, it's the hotel cat. It's never been seen before.
Oh, it's been mentioned before.
It's not been seen before.
No, it's not been seen before, but I don't think that, I'm sorry, I know there's probably lots of cat lovers out there. Ian, you've got a couple yourself, I believe. It's just disgusting. Having a cat running about a kitchen. It's not on.
It's fine. My cat's walking around the worktops and stuff.
It's manky. I mean, I wouldn't eat in a kitchen like that. I wouldn't. If I was in a hotel or... No, I'm sorry, it's not acceptable. The cat has got his little furry paws everywhere, sniffing about everything. No, it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And I'd be worried about that. The hotel inspector should be pulling him up. Sorry, you can't have a cat.
They're very clean, aren't they?
Oh, don't see that.
They lick themselves clean, including their bums. Anyway, everything is clean.
Yes, they lick their bums and then they lick the meat. Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. No harm to them, but keep them out of the kitchen.
Don't give them a chef's hat.
No.
In Manuel's room.
Yeah, we see Basil go up the stair into the hall, and he is enticed by what?
Mariachi sounds coming from the... certainly guitar music that Manuel is playing. And
singing along to as well.
Indeed.
Did you notice it's a new set here?
Is it?
They go around the corner and we see another set of stairs up to a third floor.
Oh, it's exciting. Why did they bother with that for one episode?
Who knows? But at least they're considering it.
Is this where we're saying Manuel's room is?
Yes,
Okay, so he's in the attic.
effectively.
Yes, Basil comes in and he asks for help with the pigeons, and that causes a little bit of trouble.
It does, yes. Manuel finds this incredible and hilarious.
Yeah, well, he thinks Basil's told him there are flying pigs in the water tank.
Yeah. Initially, Basil doesn't understand why Manuel is so confused, but he explains he means pig, like his English.
Pigeon, like he's English. Yeah, the Spanish to English dictionary, which Manuel seems to have.
Conveniently, yeah. Well, I suppose in
He would
fairness,
have, wouldn't
yeah.
he? You have to look things up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the traditional type that you all got in school if you did Spanish or any other language. And it comes in handy here. Basil's able to point out the word that he requires.
However, with this confusion cleared up, Basil finds that he has a bigger problem.
Yes, there's a cage there with a rat in it.
It's not a rat, Ian, it's a Siberian hamster.
Is it? Have you looked into this?
Well, that's what Manuel tells us.
Okay. Basil's persuaded that it's a rat and it has to go.
I think it's definitely a rat. Manuel's obviously been conned at the pet shop.
It doesn't make a lot of sense because rats are quite popular pets in themselves.
Back then,
I don't know. Now, certainly.
might be quite popular, but I would suggest that hamsters are easier to sell.
Yeah, and I don't think that hamsters have tails, so that would maybe explain where Manuel went wrong. Basil takes the cage with the rat, and I think he's heading downstairs.
He is. He's not messing around, and I have a lot of sympathy for Basil in this episode.
Yeah, well, Manuel clearly hasn't sought permission to keep a rat in the hotel.
No, okay, because he wouldn't have received permission
No.
for that.
Well, he's mentioned his hamster before, hasn't he? In the Germans, I think. Did Basil know about it?
In that case, yeah, he's misinformed, he's misled. And it's still Manuel's fault, even if he's been conned himself. You can't have a rat. And so this is the first time, but not the last time in this episode, where we're laughing at Manuel for being stupid. Now, in the past, a lot of the humour involving him has came about because of misunderstandings and a communication breakdown because of the language differences, which is fine because it's understandable. However, we're now led to believe that Manuel is so stupid that he doesn't understand the difference between a rat and a hamster. And later on, there's another example of his stupidity.
Yeah, that wasn't what I thought the character was up until basically this episode, but there we go. It's interesting. He is in hysterics at this point, of course, as Basil takes the rat away.
Yeah, I mean, Basil's trying to explain again. As I said there, I have a lot of sympathy. He says, Manuel, if the hotel inspector sees this, the hotel could be closed, will be closed down. I'll be out of business and you'll be sent back. You'll lose your job and you'll have to go back to Madrid. He's perfectly reasonable.
Would it make a difference if it was a hamster?
I'm not sure.
Because a domesticated rat in a cage is doing no more harm than a hamster in a cage.
Mm-hmm. You just don't want to take the risk with hotel inspectors having rats around the place.
True.
Not just that, it's, well, as we see later on, in fact, shortly, people, whether or not rightly or wrongly, have very different opinions on rats and hamsters.
Yeah, it's true. They certainly do.
In fact, Tibbs and Gatsby, I think just now.
Yeah, immediately, yes, as they walk through the corridor.
What happens?
They offer sympathy to Manuel and say that they'll keep his hamster in their room if he's not allowed to have it. Mm-hmm. But Basil short-circuits that discussion very quickly and effectively.
How?
He shows them the cage.
And they
scream and run off.
Yeah, scream rat and run away. We're down at reception now, and as Basil tells a couple of guests not to worry about what they see in the cage, he is simply getting rid of a hamster. We see Manuel complain to Polly, who prepares him for a reality check.
Does she? Is that what she's doing?
Yes.
She says to prepare for a surprise.
Yeah, the surprise is it's a rat and not a hamster. He has been conned. She knows it is a rat.
You don't think it's because she's immediately had the idea of how to save the rat?
No, not at all.
Okay. Is she on the phone? I think she's distracted in some way.
I am putting my foot down at this point. It's not testicles this time, I'm right. I won't be retracting this.
In the kitchen, Sybil is shocked to learn that Manuel has been hiding this rat in his room for a year without anybody finding out.
It's a complete lack of self-awareness here. I think she's moaning at Basil for not knowing this, but she didn't know herself.
No, and their cleaners obviously weren't involved.
And goes on to point out, Sybil that is, the possible repercussions which causes Basil to suggest that she'd go on mastermind. What's her specialist topic?
The bleeding obvious.
Classic line. What does he want to do with it?
Well, he just wants to release it, give it its freedom, but
In a field, yeah.
Sybil says that's cruel. I don't know why.
Well, she says it's been domesticated and it wouldn't be able to fend for itself. I think Basil talks about it being attacked by a gang of field mice.
Yeah.
And
He also tells Sybil that she's domesticated and she does all right in defending herself.
And that this verbal sparring goes on when she talks about you can't be cruel to a living being.
Yeah,
and
I didn't get this because he says that she's cruel to him and he's a creature.
Mhm.
She says he's not living.
he's not got a life.
Oh, he's not got like, okay.
That's what she means. He's not a... Yeah, because earlier on, she wants to go out, have fun, socialise, and he doesn't, so he's he's not living a life.
Manuel comes in and gives them an ultimatum.
Which Basil quickly and happily accepts. It's either Manuel or the rodent.
He offers the farewell handshake. And then Sybil suggests they have the rat put to sleep.
Yeah, did we miss... Was this after she suggests putting an advert... Or trying to rehome it, and he says, yeah, no problem, I'll place an advert in the paper for a giant rodent, or an enormous savage rodent, and then under his
Answers to
breath...
Sybil, that's later on, I think.
Is it? Okay.
Is it? I don't know.
It's round about here, yeah?
Yeah. Anyway, when Sybil suggests that they have it put to sleep, Basil asks whether she's talking about Manuel or the rat.
Yeah, she spells it out, S-L-E-E-P, and I think we see Manuel trying to work this out, and he asks what is slep or something.
Yeah. Polly's arriving now with more good news.
Apparently.
She has a friend nearby with lots of animals who will take him, and Manuel can visit at any time. Oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah, but they have to go right now. And we see a reluctant Manuel follow her out after worrying that the rat might forget him.
I quite enjoyed Basil's response to that rats are like that and you just shouldn't get involved.
So outside, and to a mournful Spanish guitar, we see Manuel and Polly depart with the rat before we fade back in to the kitchen, I think the next day.
Yeah, it seemed a bit easy, is what I noted down here.
What?
The dealing with the rat.
Well, I suppose this is the first point where it all goes wrong. Had to get rid of the rat, that would be fine. There's another point later on in this episode where I think they could still retrieve the situation, but of course they don't.
No.
Okay, we're in the kitchen. The place is looking in far better shape as Sybil removes the cat. Again, it's just, the cat's pawing at food and it's disgusting. And she removes it.
Yes, and Basil comes in and sarcastically confirms he's cleared and now covered the water tank.
Yes. We see a very sorrowful looking Manuel enter.
Yeah, there's an odd exchange now between Basil. Well, not really an exchange. Basil talks to Manuel, wants to cheer him up, and tells Sybil that she's not helping by indulging his misery.
Yeah.
And Basil wants to almost force Manuel to cheer up.
Yeah, sort of physically, I think it's interesting as well. There's one point where he gets near him and Manuel sort of shirks back, thinking he's about to be...
He says, please don't hit me, you always hit me.
Yeah, and I think that says quite a lot, perhaps about his... he can put up with the abuse that he gets when things are going okay and he's, think life's looking good, but if he's a bit down, perhaps these things play in his mind. And we should note as well that he's wearing a black armband.
But then we do learn that he's only acting.
We do.
So, I don't know. He may be just trying to make Mr. Fawlty feel bad.
Yeah, but it's, it's quite perceptive of him then, that he knows he's putting on a very good act.
That's at odds with his displayed stupidity at other points in the episode.
Yeah.
Basil tells him there's plenty more fish in the sea. And he suggests going to the cinema or going to the ice rink with Polly.
Yeah. Although I think during the pep talk, he talks about depression.
That's a wee bit later on, yeah. So Basil, having made these genuine suggestions, grows frustrated that Manuel's not taking his advice. And he barks at him, and that's when Manuel starts cowering. And Sybil chastises Basil, but he won't let it go, and he starts talking about depression. Or Sybil suggests that Manuel's depressed, and Basil has a bit of a diatribe against depression in general.
Yeah, he says if you don't deal with it, it's something that grows on you until one day, and at this point Sybil butts in with, you wake up and open up a hotel in Torquay.
Yeah, I don't think Basil's got the firmest grip of how depression works.
No, I mean, you wouldn't expect him to. Certainly the attitudes and education towards, mental health has improved drastically, even in the last sort of 5-10 years. Back then it was a case of give yourself a shake and get on with it. But I think before we move on, I think that what Sybil said there, we've discussed before. I mean, could this be then the business buying the hotel, the result of some sort of nervous breakdown, some sort of depression, that maybe a midlife crisis where he needs to do something with his life?
Has he maybe left a well-paid city job or something to come to the coast and do something less stressful? It's not maybe worked out quite that well.
Yeah, possibly. That's what I was thinking.
Or is she just saying that running this hotel is equivalent to killing yourself?
Either or.
As Sybil and Basil leave, we find out, like I mentioned earlier, that Manuel is at it.
Yes, I think Polly says to him that he's laying it on a bit thick, effectively, and to
tone it down,
yeah, cheer up slightly.
And Terry gives him a bit of food for the rat, presumably. But Manuel's not satisfied with that.
No, why not?
Because he wants some of the fillet steak for the rat as well.
Yeah, and some water, and he walks out. Well, we should say at this point we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
He takes some food and water and heads out to the outhouse. Yeah,
he refuses to take the sarcastic offer of béarnaise sauce because it's got too much cholesterol.
Who's it for and where is it?
Well, I want to say one thing before we left that, because the very last part of that scene, Terry looks at the camera in exasperation, which is, I think, is he breaking the wall? Is he not? Is it just a chance thing?
I'll need to look at that again, yeah.
Okay, so maybe have a look back at that. It looks to me like he addresses the camera with his exasperated look.
Could be a mistake. Could be a deliberate breaking of the fourth wall.
Yes, outside Manuel is feeding the rat, who we learn is called Basil.
Back at reception, and we see Polly unsuccessfully attempt some very underhand sales techniques on a bastard of a guest.
Well, apparently he must have complimented one of her paintings, or pretended to compliment one of her paintings that's in his room, and therefore she's wrapped it up and she's going to sell it to him as he leaves.
Yeah.
He doesn't want it.
He doesn't, no. And as she tries to push the deal through, we see Manuel rush in a panic to tell her that Basil the Rat has gone.
Yes. Now, this is the start. Basically, for the rest of the episode, Manuel acts like this, and I don't like it.
Well, this is what we alluded to earlier on. So, how has this rat escaped?
Because Manuel's a moron. He left the cage door open so the rat could exercise.
Yeah, exactly. So, previously, Manuel, communication breakdowns, comedy ensues. This is now him being thick, being an idiot.
It's beyond thick.
Yeah.
Anyway, Polly gives him some racist abuse, which is not justified even if he's been thick, and shakes him by the lapels just as Basil comes in and compliments her for her actions.
Yes.
Shaking him out of his depression.
So Manuel doesn't notice that Basil's behind him, and he is bemoaning the loss of Basil, and Polly has to reprimand him and say, no, that's Mr. Fawlty to you. And then I think speaking in Spanish to let him know what the situation is.
Manuel toddles off at this point, and that's when Basil commends Polly, and the Major shows up.
Yeah, he makes an appearance to collect his paper and complain about another strike before heading through to the bar to read it.
He asks Basil why they bother, and Basil quite correctly notes that, I didn't know you did.
However, the Major soon finds that he is not alone.
No, there's a rat sitting on a table challenging him.
Yeah, so he whispers for it not to move, and then very sprightly heads upstairs.
Yep, and Basil heads through to the kitchen with some flowers.
Yeah, artificial flowers.
Yes, which aren't clean enough.
So he tells Terry to put them in the washing machine.
Dishwasher,
yeah.
He then returns from the kitchen to reception and sees the Major go past with his gun.
Yeah, it's a nice little piece of physical acting there because they almost miss each other, but out the corner of his eye, he catches him and he almost has to do a double take. Did I really see that? And he follows him through, and the Major has this shotgun, which obviously he keeps in his room.
That's crazy.
Yeah, why does he need... He doesn't need a shotgun.
No.
Anyway, yeah, he's stalking through now. Basil approaches, but has to take a step back when the Major turns and points it directly at him.
The Major complains about vermin, but Basil explains that there's no German guests this week.
Yeah, the Major is often on a rant, which Basil perceives to be a racist one. And Basil tries to placate him by saying that they should at least pretend to try and forgive and forget.
And for some reason, he's not tipped off by the Major saying, but they're animals, Fawlty.
Yeah.
But he is tipped off when the Major says, but they spread disease.
Well, I'm not even sure if he's tipped off at that point. It's not until he mentions the tail. I think that, animals would be a way you would describe someone who you dislike and think have acted abhorrently. And disease, it's just another insult. But I think it clicks at the point where he says they've got a tail, and then it shows what size the creature is.
Yeah, I think Basil realises for sure what he's seen.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, this doesn't go down too well. He's now seething, so he takes the Major's gun, puts that behind the bar, and storms into the kitchen and then dining room looking for Polly.
Yeah, in the kitchen he passes Terry hunting behind the fridge.
Yeah, he's acting very suspicious. I think he says he's just cleaning behind the fridge. And so he heads through, as I said, to the dining room, where he finds Polly's protruding posterior facing him from under a table.
Basil? Basil? Cheesies? Basil?
Yes. Here I am.
Oh, hello,
Oh, that's
Mr.
for me,
Fawlty.
is it? Thank you.
Shall I get you some more? There's plenty.
He's called Basil, is he? Don't play dumb with me. I trusted you. You're responsible for this. Oh, I've got a friend who'll look after him, Mr. Fawlty. Come on now. Come on. Basil's here.
Have you got him?
He's under there.
Right, I'll get him.
Cleaning behind the fridge.
Well, you got a lot on your mind. We didn't want to worry you, Mr.
What do you mean, a public health inspector coming? After a 24-hour warning and a rat loose in the hotel, is that what you mean?
He must have escaped, Mr. Fawlty, and come back.
Come back.
They home.
Oh, I see. He's a homing rat, is he?
Oh, yeah, rats are amazing creatures, Mr. Fawlty. I read about one once. His owner had gone down to Penzance.
Yes, I read about that when the chef got filleted with his own carving knife.
No, honest. Scout's honour.
We'll find him, Mr. Fawlty.
Well, if you could, that would be lovely before they close us down. Super. Well, let's have a little Basil hunt, shall we? And then we'll deal with the sackings later on.
I'll do the cellar.
I'll do this floor. Manuel, you check your room.
It's not in the bar, Polly. It was there 2 minutes ago. I'll do the kitchen.
It's interesting that when Basil mimics Polly, he uses an American accent, because obviously Polly is English and speaks with an English accent. However, Connie Booth, who plays her, is from America originally. I don't know how long she was there, but I wonder if he's mimicking her.
Quite possibly. Do you think that was something that went on in their private life?
When they mimic each other, I think that goes on in every relationship.
Yeah.
That was one of my favourite lines as well, at the end of the clip there about dealing with the sacking. So we'll come back to favourite lines, but I think that might be one of mine.
Back in the kitchen, Basil finds some rat poison and covers a slice of meat with it, and then leaves it on the floor before monkeying back out to reception, where we see Mr. Carnegie arrive.
It wasn't a branded rat poison, was it? It was just
rat
a
poison.
very generic sort of pantomime prop.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Carnegie's arrived back, and Sybil comes down, and he wants to start by examining the water tanks.
Yeah, and at this point things start to go awry when 2 shots are heard from the bar, which Basil unsuccessfully tries to pass off as the TV exploding. But Sybil agrees with Mr. Carnegie that the noise did indeed sound like shots, and as they head through, we see Polly burst onto the scene.
Yeah, she comes through with a giant, some kind of net for catching something.
Flying rats.
Yeah.
In the bar, Basil manages to wrestle the shotgun from the Major. That's very dangerous. You don't start wrestling
Absolutely.
guns at people.
He has to deal him a low blow as well to stop him talking about the rat.
Yeah, I thought that was harsh and uncalled for. It's one of the moments I'm not sure. We've said before that the Major can be a bit of an old racist, and normally a bit of an old racist getting a shot to the undercarriage is warranted, but I don't know. I feel a bit sorry for the old chap. I don't think Basil... I mean, this is one of the incidents that could find you jailed. Certainly up in court.
It certainly wasn't a fair fight.
No, you don't do that to an old guy.
Especially when he's not expecting it.
Exactly. You could kill him. Might never have children.
Again, back in reception, Carnegie launches into an explanation for Sybil about why it's her fault that the gun has gone off and her responsibility to deal with it.
Yeah, I think he asks about licenses and the fact that he will certainly have to report it to the police, who will no doubt take some action. But Manuel then adds to the pandemonium by running in and asking if Basil has been shot. So we have to make it clear here that Sybil doesn't know who Basil is, the rat.
No, she doesn't even know the rat's in the building.
Exactly. And so she obviously doesn't know what he is talking about.
Polly's cover story here is terrible.
What is it?
She tries to distract them by saying that Manuel's talking about ratatouille, which is called Basil because of the amount of basil in it.
Dreadful.
That both Manuel and Sybil look baffled.
Yeah, but Manuel then screams in anger because he thinks that...
The rat's in the ratatouille?
Yes.
Why would he think that?
Because that's what she just said. That Basil's in the ratatouille.
Yeah, but he must obviously figure out what's going on. I mean, he's so slow of thinking.
He's stupid in this episode.
Yeah. It's like Manuel 2, that's what we'll call him.
He's not helped because he asked for confirmation, but Polly's in the position where she can't say... no. She can't deny it. Yeah. So he runs through to the kitchen.
I do like the fact that Sybil gets to deliver the "he's from Barcelona" line.
Yes, that was very good. Nicely timed, and I think you can sense the appreciation from the studio audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so Manuel's having a go at Terry, who is adamant that he hasn't done the deed with the ratatouille, and in fact, hasn't even made any ratatouille recently.
Yeah, and Polly comes through to explain what's going on, and Manuel is now near manic, I would probably say, if not already manic, because he thinks that there's still a chance that he could have been shot, he being the rat.
Indeed. So still agitated, he goes to leave, but what does he do?
Well, Polly is fetching the veal for Terry, and she's kind of had a half slip on the one that Basil put on the ground, and then Manuel knocks the rest of them out of her hand onto the rat poisoned area.
Yeah, meaning that Terry picks up all the slices, including the one with the poison on it, and places it back into the tray.
Okay, we come back to this, but how can they possibly think the poison's been contained to one slice?
Yeah.
But it's all fallen in a
He
pile.
absolutely doused it, didn't he? It was covered, it was like talc in a baby's bottom.
I think you would probably safely say all of these are now inedible.
Yeah, we'll get to the second point that I mentioned earlier in the episode, that they could salvage the situation, but they don't.
Out in reception, we get a moment that kind of goes back to communication problems in the first episode in this series, when Basil's trying to explain something to the Major.
Yes.
And I think he just about convinces him not to mention rats.
Well, I mean, firstly, we should mention that the Major seems to have very quickly recovered and forgiven Basil for that vicious assault.
Probably forgotten.
Really? I mean, the memory might go, but the pain remains.
I don't think it was a vicious shot.
I'm not so sure. Did you see his face? We should mention that as well. The response from the Major was quite amusing.
Yeah. A lot of this show, actually, you get people who aren't saying anything, but how they respond to Basil or whatever's going on is important.
That's a good point. And in fact, Ballard Berkeley, if you watch him in a lot of the episodes, where he's often maybe sitting in the dining room and there's action going on around him, he does a very good job of just getting on with his business and contributing very nicely, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the story is that the Major was shooting starlings from the bar.
Out the window, which isn't broken.
No. Well, you would open the window up.
He opened the window, shot, and then closed the window?
How do we know it was closed?
Well, someone surely would have mentioned. Maybe it would have been mentioned? No.
No, he's just saying he was in the bar shooting at birds in the garden.
No, it didn't occur to me that the window might have been open.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Well, he's not, yeah, I mean, he's doing a bit of hunting. He's not going to shoot through the glass, is he?
I thought maybe he just panicked when he saw a starling and
No,
shot out the window.
No, I think what they're saying here is that the Major was hunting effectively.
Okay.
Back into the kitchen.
We see a bit of a difference here in how Basil deals with the cat compared to everybody else.
Yeah, what does he do?
Well, he similarly lifts it away. I think it's on the veal at this stage.
I'm stopping you again here. This is repulsive. Your manky cat all over the veal.
It's not manky.
It is manky. It's absolutely foul. Anyway.
Yeah, so Basil takes the piece of veal and puts it on top of a cupboard.
Yes.
Why didn't he put it in the bin?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Oh, was no... Yeah, that wasn't the poison piece.
No, it's the piece the cat's been licking.
Yes.
And biting.
Yeah, exactly. Puts it up high, yeah. I don't know why I didn't throw it in the bin.
No. Anyway, he asks Terry where the poisoned one is, and he's no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think Terry hands a couple of plates of veal to Polly, who is about to serve.
Basil panics about this because any of them could be poisoned.
Yeah, so he quickly rushes out and removes the plates from the table, telling the confused diners that this was an experiment with veal substitute, which has been a disaster.
His explanation's a disaster.
Why?
Why did you have to mention veal substitutes? Why can't you say there's a problem with the veal? Take it away.
Yeah. Oh, he always overcomplicates
He wants
things.
to produce... It's like we talked about liars last week. He wants to produce a story that you won't challenge.
Yeah.
Is it one of these diners that is Andrew Sack's wife?
It is. I think it's the lady diner here.
You think? What, out of the two of them?
Yeah, who knows?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Melody Lang was her name.
Okay. That's nice that they got her in.
Mm-hmm.
In the kitchen, Basil starts to take these veals back through, but sees Carnegie and wheels back round to the dining room.
Yeah, I don't think we see immediately what he does with them, but he obviously hides them somewhere in there.
Yeah. He then goes back through to the kitchen, where he hears Carnegie telling Sybil that everything is now fine in that part of the hotel.
Yes, but whilst listening to this, Basil spots the rat poison which he indiscreetly grabs before Carnegie says that he wishes to lunch in the hotel and asks about the veal.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of bottles get smashed here. First of all, when he's moving the rat poison, I think he knocks one, and then he grabs another, and when Carnegie mentions the veal, Basil drops the bottle once again.
And then goes on to tell this fantastic tale again about how the veal is in fact subpar Norwegian produce, and they are doing a deal at the moment on lobster.
I think we've had prior notice of Basil's propensity to drop bottles when given bad news in Gourmet Night, when the chef's drunkenness was revealed to him behind the bar.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, no, he tries to persuade Carnegie to take the lamb, but that's not going to work.
No, the annoyed Carnegie insists that he wants veal and leaves to make a call as Polly enters to find out what is going on.
What's all this about rat poison on the veal?
He's put rat poison on one. They got mixed up. Nobody knows which is which now. Well, what happened to the one the cat had?
The cat?
That's no good. That might have poison on it too.
Well, where is it?
What?
Where's the cat slice?
Up there.
Right, now, how's the cat?
How's the cat? We're about to take the life of a public health inspector, and you want to know how's the cat? It's going to London to see the Queen. What are we going to do?
He's all right.
Great.
Hooray! Hooray! The cat lives! The cat lives! Long live the cat! What are we going to do?
Mr. Fawlty, if the cat is all right, that means that slice is all right.
Well, how long would it take to work?
That stuff, 2 minutes. He had this 10 minutes ago at least.
It's a bit chewed there.
I'll give it a trim.
I did enjoy Basil's rant there.
I liked his happy dance when he learned that the cat was okay.
Yeah, but this is the second point where things could still be resolved satisfactorily if they simply said, or Basil said to the hotel inspector, bearing in mind he's not a food critic.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the veal's off. Not serving it. It doesn't have to get into any more elaborate. It was. He could have said that since he was around, they had elevated their standards. They're trying even harder. They don't think it's quite fresh enough, so it's not serving. If he insists, it's simply a case of, no, I'm sorry, it's off the menu. That's it.
See, I think Basil's concern then is that he's going to identify a health violation or probe for a health violation, which might lead to them getting shut down. So he wants to come up with something that gets them off.
Maybe, but they're now playing Russian roulette with someone's life.
That's well funny, yeah. That's literally what Russian roulette is.
If you're up for it, if you know you're playing.
Well.
Anyway, so through in the dining room, Sybil tries to sit Carnegie down at a table, but is prevented in doing so by a plate of veal, followed by a second that Basil retrieves when he comes through.
Yeah, Basil hopes this might have put Carnegie off the veal, but no.
Yeah, he also blames Manuel and hands him the dishes and gives him a slap through to the kitchen.
I was almost convinced Manuel was then going to serve those back to the couple that had them originally.
So they move Carnegie to another table, and give him a new plate. I think he wishes him a good appetit, I think he says.
Yeah, and then he exits via the kitchen looking relieved and ends up out the back.
Yeah, he's having a breather. I think he thinks the job has been done and he's taking a well-earned rest, but this is where things go very badly wrong.
Yeah, he sees the cat vomiting and runs back through.
Yeah, he grabs the veal from the table, claiming it to be too cold and then not big enough.
Yeah, but his too cold line doesn't work when his hands are burnt as he picks it up. Back in the kitchen, Terry points out that if that one that he's now put in the bin is the poisoned one, then the rest of them must be fine. And I'm thinking, no, they were all on the same plate.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't take a risk with this. The veal's off the menu, and that's it.
Yeah, it got rat poison on it, but that's probably a violation.
Anyway, as this new piece gets prepared, Basil goes back to tell Carnegie that one is on its way, and we see Manuel seating a younger couple.
Yes, but we also then go back to the kitchen and see Polly coming in with the cat.
A healthy cat, which confuses Basil until Sybil points out that it was only fur balls, and the cat does it all the time.
Yeah, some cats are prone to hairballs. One of my 2 cats has hairballs. It's just because they lick themselves and the hair gets in their mouth. And
Disgusting.
it's perfectly clean.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want your cat licking itself and then licking my meat.
Well, we all need a hobby, I guess. Basil's immediate concern, however, is that the meat he has just served could now be the poisoned one.
Yeah, so he rushes back into the dining room, claiming that the portion is now too big and they wouldn't want to be accused of favouritism.
You don't favour a civil servant.
I think at this point the Major jumps up and addresses Carnegie as the Rat Inspector before correcting himself to the Starling Inspector, causing Basil to insinuate that the Major's mad, which is probably not far off it.
Yeah, no, I think he's fine with that explanation. At the other side of the room, Manuel is serving this younger couple.
Yeah, I would say a snooty. Certainly the gentleman was an idiot, yeah, or an arse. Some other words that probably aren't podcast suitable, yeah. But he gets distracted.
Yeah, by the legs of the man's fiancée.
They were very pleasant, but no, it wasn't that. It was the rat which was hovering around her feet.
Yeah. Did you think that the man came across as a little bit possessive and sexist?
I'm not sure if it's sexist. If a waiter was acting like that with me and my wife, I'm thinking, what are you doing? Stop looking down there, take my order. I wouldn't be happy.
Would you refer to your wife as my wife when you're talking to other people?
Maybe. If it's strangers who don't know our relationship.
So you're defining her in relation to you, rather than letting her be a person?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. In the kitchen, they're still hashing it out over the veal. Terry's got one out of the bin. I think the one that the cat had that was originally served and was then taken back and chucked out.
They think this is now okay, if a little dirty.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
This is the worst. Are they going to wash it? What are they going to do?
It's got to cover it with some sort of sauce or pick bits off it.
Oh, that's disgusting. Manuel comes in now to explain about the rat situation.
Yeah, table 7. Back in the dining room, the man complains about his treatment to Basil. But unfortunately, he also appears to be of similar mind as he looks under the table. He's fascinated with whatever's under there.
Yeah, Basil explains that there's a bread roll down there.
Mm-hmm. But rather than take his order, which the man's trying to place, he asks Polly to do so. And he and Manuel forage around under the table until we get to the point where Basil tells him to go and get the box, or a box.
The roll box.
Yes, for bread which is past its prime.
The guest says to leave it, but Basil explains the regulations mean he has to get it now.
And things get even more awkward when he manages to, the man that is, place his order for veal, and Basil tells him it is off and that it is in fact a misprint in the menu.
Yes, it should be eel.
Yeah, a Japanese-Norwegian cross, not very good.
No.
And at the same time, what does Polly notice?
The rat's now in the woman's handbag.
Yeah. So when they decide, or the man certainly decides that they are leaving, Basil is happy enough to oblige and sort of shepherds him out to reception.
I think the final straw is when they've been told they can't get veal and Carnegie's served veal at the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Basil gives him the old substitute food line and they decide that's enough.
And out at reception, whilst Polly tries to organise a taxi and recommend another restaurant, Basil tries to retrieve his namesake.
Can you recommend a restaurant?
Yes, of course. What sort of
Yes, where is somewhere that serves really good veal, Polly? Somewhere in the...
veal? Yes, of course. A really good restaurant. No, wait just a minute, because I do remember a place. Well, I had some really good veal once. Only I just can't think of the name of it. It was la-di-da. Did you see Annie Hall? La-di-da.
Annie who?
What are you doing?
What?
He had his hand in my bag.
What? No, you know something? You're getting my dander up, you grotty little man. You're asking for a bunch of fives.
Bomb scare.
What?
There's been a bomb scare.
A bomb scare? Yes.
Yes, that's why he was searching in your bag. He didn't want to alarm you.
May I?
Well, I don't really...
Won't be... Just 1 moment. Thank you.
We had a call, you see.
Well, shouldn't you get everybody out?
Well, that's why we were looking under your table. We just didn't want to draw attention.
What did we see at the end of the clip there?
The rat sprinted across reception into the dining room.
It certainly did. Under the table, but is quickly captured by Manuel, who is shielding it when he is summoned by Carnegie. So what does he do?
He hides it in the tub of the crackers.
Yes. Which is on the Major's table. But when Manuel turns round to speak to Carnegie, the Major moves this box to help himself. And so, when Carnegie asks for cheese and biscuits, a puzzled Manuel goes through to the kitchen to get some more, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't understand. You can still see it. It's still in front of him.
Yeah. Again, Manuel just being really stupid. If it wasn't in exactly the same position that it had been 3 seconds ago, it must have vanished.
Anyway, Basil comes in and brings Carnegie the cheeses, and Polly recovers this box of biscuits from the Major as Manuel just stoats around, bouncing off the walls.
Yes. Of course, when Basil opens the lid for Carnegie, he is met by a rat who turns his head around to stare directly at him as the rest look on.
This was some of the best CGI that they've done in many years.
Yeah. So not knowing what to do, what does Basil ask him?
He asks if he would care for a rat.
Before calmly sending Polly off with the tin, and Sybil plays along by asking if he wants his coffee black or white.
Yeah, now, we talked about this earlier in the week, actually, you and I. The play here seems to be act like it didn't happen, and he'll convince himself it couldn't possibly have happened because it's so absurd. And you can see, it took me a while to figure out, but you can see that influence. We've talked about the influence of this show on Father Ted a few times, and you can see almost the exact same thing happens in that with the Bishop Brennan incident where he is kicked by Ted, and then he just denies it to his face and says, I would never kick, it's so absurd that it would never happen, and the guy has to eventually just believe that didn't happen.
I think there's also a hint at it in the hotel inspectors with Bernard Cribbins.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yes, Basil and Polly double team him and get him
so to speak.
Yes, except that Basil wasn't telling him to shut up, I think. Something like that.
Polly then returns with a new rat-free box. And I think Sybil mentions the weather.
Yeah, as Basil who has just moments earlier walked off normally, is now dragged unconscious out by Manuel. And that's the end.
It is a fitting end to the show, I think.
I think Basil's he's off to Bedlam or somewhere.
Yeah, had enough. Finally collapsed. It's got too much for him. And I think that's the type of thing that would ruin you. A rat in the biscuit tub you're getting closed down for that.
No, these things happen.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no evidence of the rat eating the biscuits.
So. Well, you're fine with cats and all that, aren't you? So
it's fine. Rats are clean creatures.
Yeah, same as cats.
It's been proved that it wasn't them that brought the plague and everything.
Fair enough.
People, that's the ones that we should worry about.
Certainly. Anyhow, enjoy the episode.
Very much. It's a good, strong finale. It's interesting. It's not a sort of grand finale. It's not put out there as a wrap-up show or a tribute to anything, or it's not produced in the way that you would expect to be produced if they're thinking this is our last ever show.
Well, I think these days TV would be, a show would be tied up with a nice bow. People would get married or go off to somewhere. There's something that sort of finalises everything.
Yeah.
This episode could have been dropped into in any spot in the 12. It wouldn't have made any difference.
No, and you could pick up again at any time.
Exactly, yeah.
With a new series or a movie or whatever. I think they had some discussions about these things, but nothing ever came to fruition.
I think it's more of a British style. I think we're probably more used to an American show ending these days.
People like an end to their stories. It's not a soap opera.
Well, that's the thing. These were very episodic.
Yeah.
It wasn't really, there wasn't an arc or a story we weren't really following.
Exactly. That's more recent, that we've seen that really since turn of the century.
Although you mentioned the episode, and we discussed that, where Basil leaves, walks out himself. What episode was that? And you thought it'd be a good ending? That
was Waldorf Salad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I think that would have been a great finale if that had been the final episode. But it doesn't really matter. This is good too.
That was good, but I think there is enough of not an arc, but there's been enough character development to have, Basil perhaps walking out and saying enough's enough. Or Sybil or whoever, yeah. What we'll do, before I forget, is we'll have a wrap-up episode next week where we can sum up our thoughts on the show as a whole. We can have a quick chat about John Cleese and Connie Booth, and we can discuss what we're doing in the future moving forward for anyone who might be interested.
That sounds like a good plan.
But before we get to that, before we wrap up this episode, will we stick with tradition and go through a little bit of production information and trivia?
Okay, crack on.
Very good. So, the episode was first broadcast on the 25th of October 1979. Now, if you've been keeping track, that is about 7 months since the anniversary episode broadcast. And I think you know a little bit about why that was.
Yeah, there was, I think, a bit of industrial action going on. We heard that the previous episode was delayed and that caused a casting change for Roger. And then I think obviously that escalated, and I think there was a separate bit of strike action going on as well at the BBC. Yes, apparently a BBC executive punched a gaffer on one of the shows, which led to this action. And I think it was referenced the nod to when the Major read the papers about industrial action and strikes. Right. I think it was a nod to what was going on around them. It's as well that they went ahead and made it. They didn't just say, "Oh, 5 will do." Well, I think they had made it, so it wasn't broadcast for 7 months. All right, so it was made. Are you sure? Yeah, I think it was made about 2 or 3 weeks after, and then not broadcast for 7 months. I don't think they all hung about for 7 or come back after 7 months. Right, I understand. Mr. Carnegie, good performance, I thought. Very good. He played it well. He didn't go over the score. He didn't overact. Correct. He was played by John Quarmby. He was born in 1929. Still with us. You may have seen him in The Queen's Nose, The December Rose, The Liverbirds, Zed Cars, or The Comic Strip Presents. I think he was just a good character actor. Been in lots of things, but no starring roles. We should mention Brian Hall, who played Terry. Sadly died in 1997, aged 59. Although in my mind and most people's mind, he's always that sort of youngish guy. He was born in 37, he would have been well into his 80s by now. Yeah. He wrote 2 plays that were produced, so he's a playwright as well. But you may have seen him on TV in Crocodile Shoes, Birds of a Feather, The Upper Hand, Billy Webb's Amazing Story, Alfonso Bonzo, The Bill, You Must Be the Husband, Up the Elephant and Round the Castle, Breaking the Sun, Softly Softly Task Force, The Long Good Friday, or McVicker. Quite prolific. Very, yeah. I think he got into it. He wasn't. I don't think he went through the typical channels. He was a taxi driver, and then was spotted in one of these sort of real life gritty, actors who didn't go the traditional route, but found himself. Because of that, I think a lot of his roles were sort of gangster or hardmen type, maybe. Just his accent comes naturally. Yeah. John Cleese, by all accounts, was very upset and still quite close to Brian Hall in later years, very fond of him. Apparently, he at one point sent him a signed autograph picture of himself as a joke, and Hall wrote back saying that he would prefer a Rolls Royce. That was duly delivered a few days later. A toy one. Oh, right. Moving on, Ronald, understandably
obnoxious guest was played by David Neville. He has appeared in Executive Stress, Boone, Sweet 16, and Keep It in the Family. His fiancée in this episode was played by Sabina Taylor. She was born in 1954 and has appeared in Coronation Street, The Upper Hand, Full House, also Keep It in the Family, Miss Marple, and Pride and Prejudice. She is the daughter of actor William Franklin. Now, he's appeared in lots of things, but we might have known him, or we have heard him, as the narrator of the banana commercial in the Jonathan Creek episode Jack in the Box.
That's the second ever episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, the first?
First, maybe, I think. First
No,
or second?
because first one was the one with Doctor Who in it.
Correct, okay. So, yeah, if you are a fan of Jonathan Creek and you'd like to listen to a podcast about that, you can find a couple of gents discussing it at jonathancreekpodcast.com. Just search for it. You can get them on Twitter as well, I think, and what have you.
Yeah, all the usual places.
Yeah.
You can find Fawlty Towers on there as well.
You can, yeah. And also, she is the ex-wife of actor John Challis, who played Boycie in Only Fools and Horses.
It's a good connection.
Yeah. What trivia do you have for us other than Melody Lang?
The one other thing that I've got is that this was the only episode to use pre-recorded scenes. Anything with a live rat had been pre-recorded. Presumably they didn't want the same situation to occur in the studio that occurred in the episode.
No doubt. Okay, what have I got for us? Some of the prop rats that were used appeared on the Antiques Roadshow in 2017 presented by the wife of the prop maker.
That's quite good. What were they worth?
Don't know, didn't watch it.
Okay.
I think I mentioned last week there's some debate. I've heard sources claiming that this is John Cleese's favourite episode. I don't think so. I think if I had to choose between both of them, I'd say last week. The song that we hear Manuel sing and play is called She and was number 1 in Britain in 1974. And continuing in that theme, the music playing as Polly and Manuel take Basil away is a piece by a Spanish composer, which was recorded by band leader Jeff Love under the pseudonym Manuel and his Music of the Mountains, and that was a hit in 1976.
There you go.
And finally, when Basil reads out the selection of cheeses to Mr. Carnegie, this was a nod to the cheese shop sketch in Monty Python.
Oh, that's quite good. They've done a few Monty Python
They have, yeah.
odds and sods.
Did we mention the sign?
No, we didn't. It was Fawlty Towers.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite a true anagram.
Good enough.
Close.
Favourite scene this week?
Favourite scene?
Or favourite moment?
I think my favourite bit was Basil saying that we'll find the rat now and then we'll deal with the sackings.
Okay. I'll go with his faux delight at the finding out the cat was okay. And so, next week, we don't have a review, but as mentioned, we have the wrap-up episode.
We'll see you then.
We will.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.